So really have kind of examples ready that will showcase who you are broadly.
Well, welcome everyone. Thanks everyone for joining our podcast today. For those of you who are new here, I'm Eric Allen and I am the general manager at Magoosh, an education technology company that aims to level the playing field by providing high quality, affordable test prep and admission support. And if you enjoyed this podcast, don't forget to subscribe to know when the next episode is coming out. Excited today to have my buddy Rodrigo, I call you Digo, here with us today to chat about all things MBA. How are you, man?
I'm doing all right. How are you, Eric?
I'm doing quite well. So why don't you start with just telling us a little bit about yourself, your role at McCombs, and maybe tell us like either how you got in the industry or like what you love most
Yeah.
about your job.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. So, hi, everybody. Really excited that you all are here listening to the podcast. As Eric said, my name is Rodrigo Malta. I also go by Digo, D-I-G-O. You can call me either name. I'm originally from Brazil. So, like every good Brazilian, I have a four-letter nickname. If I had a soccer jersey, that's what would be on my back, would be Digo. But anyways, I'm the managing director of MBA recruitment and admissions here at Texas McCombs. I've been in this role at Texas McCombs for the past 15 years. So I oversee those functions across our 5 MBA programs. We have a full-time MBA program here in Austin. We have weekend MBA programs in Dallas and Houston, and then we have evening and executive MBA programs here in Austin as well. I got to the role that I'm in today in an unplanned way. I did get my MBA here at Texas McCombs, graduated in the class 2007, but I always like to share with applicants that I did not write about being in MBA admissions in my application essays. So back in the day, a long, long time ago, I was living in Kansas City, so go Chiefs, and working in internal audit and wanted to do a pivot in my career. Didn't quite know what I wanted to do, so I thought a full-time MBA was a good place to explore different career options and kind of retool my tool belt to be able to advance more quickly in the professional workspace. So that's what brought me to McCombs. I was originally focusing on finance after an internship up in Jersey for kind of Fortune 10 company. I decided to change gears. I looked around the room, and everybody in the room that I was in was way more passionate about finance than I was. So I was like, all right, I think I should do something that I'm really passionate about. So I came back. Change focus, went the marketing route, was working here at Dell here in town in marketing. Did that for about a year, and then an opportunity came open to do a diversity recruitment role for our full-time MBA program at Texas McCombs. So that's how I entered the industry, and I never left. I really love the job that I do. I love the school that I represent. And I feel like an MBA, regardless of where you go to school, is an incredible and transformative experience. So I think it's our job to really guide students to put, or prospective students, to put their best foot forward as they work in their application and showcase what they bring to the table to different schools.
Well, that's an awesome story. Like to go from like internal audit to like where you are in admissions right now, and I think the point that you brought up about how the MBA creates those opportunities to be able to move around in your career because you have this really strong foundational background. I think is really critical for our audience. And by the way, I'm a Ravens fan, so we'll have to have a little bit of some challenge this week, but we'll see what happens. Maybe we'll have to put a drink on that for the next time we get together. Put a bet on that one. Let's change the focus a little bit to weaknesses. Candidates come in all the time. I'm sure talking to you, talking to me, and they want to be perfect, and they're not gonna be, right. So we know that. So let's talk about those weaknesses. What are some of the more common candidate weaknesses coming in? And then let's go down the path of maybe some ideas that you can give our audience of like how to systematically think through those weaknesses, address those weaknesses. Do you not bring them up to admissions? Do you bring them up, and how we do that? Let's go down that path over the next little while here. But let's first start with What are some of those common weaknesses that you see with typical candidates?
Yeah, so I think the number one weakness that I see come across, first of all, completely agree with what you just said, that no candidate is gonna be perfect, and recognizing the areas where you have an opportunity to grow. Or have weaknesses is really a way for you to showcase your self-awareness and enable us to work with you in overcoming that particular weakness. So something that I see quite common in the applicant pool as I talk to prospective students is a weak GPA, right? So for many of our MBA candidates, undergrad was a little while back, so it's not last year. They're not currently in undergrad, and they are really worried about something that happened in their undergraduate experience. So it may have been an overall weak GPA. It may have been something that happened early on as they're transitioning from high school to college. So those first couple of years maybe have been bumpy. Maybe it was a major that they thought they were going to enjoy that was not the area that they wanted, that they thought, therefore they didn't do as well academically. So a weak GPA is an area where candidates come to our admissions team and are like, look, it was in the past. I can't do much about it. How how do I present that information to the admissions committee? And my advice around that, I'm curious, kind of what you share with some of your MBA prospective students as well, Eric, is one, use the optional statement in the application to let us know the situation. It's not a place to find excuses, but let us know what happened, right? Let the admissions committee know what happened and point to other areas in the application where we're going to be able to assess your quantitative abilities. So that may be a standardized test if you have taken one. It may be classes or certificates that you have taken, or it may be a set of work experiences that you've had in the workplace that were quantitatively heavy that will help the admissions community be comfortable with kind of that piece of information that was in the past.
I think that I totally agree with that, and I think one of the things um, that candidates don't always think about is how busy your staff is. And what I mean by that is this: you have thousands of applications. You really want to advocate for each one of them, and you're on their side, but hiding from a weakness or really not really bringing up those things that you mentioned, like whether it's like you have quantitative background, but where is it? Like, hand it to me, give me the ability to advocate for you is really critical. So, what kinds of things specifically, like, so let's just take GPA, for example. Clearly, there's kind of this can you do the work in an MBA program? How would a candidate specifically speak to that in the application, whether it's the resume, whether it's in the interview, whether it's in the essays? What kinds of things like really pop out with you where you're like, okay, check, 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 I get it. They've really moved on from something that was maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, I think, starting with the resume, make sure that they really showcase those projects or kind of initiatives that they've had in the workplace that were quantitative in nature. I think the best place to pull it together is really the optional statement, because that is where you can supply a paragraph to the admissions committee that points to evidence throughout the application components about their ability to work in quantitative subjects. So that can be pointing to the resume and say, hey, I've had these experiences. Hey, look at the certificate. Maybe you have a CFA, maybe you have a CPA. Pointing to a significant kind of certificate is really key. Another is pointing to a standardized test. So if you have taken the GMAT, the GRE, or their executive assessment, and you are comfortable with that score, you send it to the school. You can say, "Look, I may have not done as well as I wanted in my undergrad experience, but here's an additional independent data point, like a standardized test, that will get the admissions committee really comfortable with my quantitative abilities at the end of the day."
When you this is your approach, and I'll say that your approach is not necessarily the approach of every admissions officer, but um, how do you feel about a candidate coming and saying, Rodrigo, here are my weaknesses. I have these concerns, but I really feel strongly about that. Having an open conversation to talk about some of these things so they can better address them for the needs of the school. How do you specifically, and how does McCombs approach that?
Yeah, so we're really proud to be able to offer all of our application components to all of our applicants. So at Texas McCombs, we do not have a triage system where an applicant submits an application and then only a percentage of those that submit their applications get invited to an admissions interview or get invited to submit the video assessment. Here, every single candidate has the ability to complete all the application components. So in a way, we're inviting all of our applicants to have that conversation with us. And we give them a lot of different communication methods to have those conversations. So it can be in written format through an optional statement, it can be through a pre recorded interview via the video assessment, it can be via a live interview, the peer interview that happens with our ambassadors. Additionally, we are always online. I feel like with virtual events, we're always on the road meeting candidates, and we have open doors here on our campus in Austin, Texas. And candidates can interact with our admissions officers and kind of tell their story as well. We have an ability to write notes in somebody's kind of application package. So know that every interaction that you have with an admissions officer counts, or anybody with our community really counts. And if you have something to share, we're going to listen and we're going to kind of document it to ensure that whenever we meet as an admissions committee, we're able to address those concerns that the admissions committee will have, that the applicant recognized that they had, so that we can ensure that's mitigated in other ways in the application.
That's great. I mean, that policy really gives candidates, really all candidates, the opportunity to get their voice out there. I want to ask you a question about journey traveled, right? So, candidates often, I mean, candidates come from so many different places, have so many unique backgrounds, and especially candidates who really want to speak to, hey, I have these challenges in the background, whether it's growing up or have unique challenges that really demonstrate things like perseverance, resilience, things like that. How would you recommend kind of speaking to that? And also in the context of weaknesses, because oftentimes that goes into an optional essay. But if I have some space where I need to maybe explain a little bit about my GPA and maybe talk about X, Y, or Z, my GMAT's not as good as whatever. Now I also want to talk about my background. When is too much to talk in an optional essay about all these different things? When does it become too much, right? I have a weakness I got to mitigate. I want to talk about my, background growing up in a single family home or, first generation or whatever. Walk us through that in this new world of trying to figure out like how to really speak to some of these things authentically.
Yeah, so I would say if there is a very specific weakness that you want to address. So let's say it's a weak GPA. Let's say there is a gap on your resume, for example. Maybe it's the choice of a recommender, something where you can be really clear and concise. Use the optional essay to speak about that. There are a lot of opportunities in the McCombs application for you to tell us your story. And by telling your story to us, we mean where you've been personally and professionally. So bring your whole self to the application. I really like the concept of kind of the journey that you traveled to date. You want to take the admissions committee as a guest in that journey. And we love individuals that have conquered challenges, either because of their personal situation or professional situation, and have persevered through those, right? So, making sure that you let us know what that looks like. And I think the best place to tell that holistic story is via the video assessment and interview. Kind of the combination of those two components allow you to give a couple examples about where you've been using both personal and professional stories. You can also use our kind of application cover letter that talks about that asks candidates to talk about where they've been, though that is a little bit more in the professional perspective, and you bring in a little bit of aspirations, where you want to go, why Texas McCombs into that particular application component. You can talk a little bit about your kind of past personal story in there, but I think the best place is really having the candidate speaking directly to members of the admissions committee via the video assessment and via the peer interview to tell us those stories, because you can add a little more context to that story, and really makes the applicant come alive at the end of the day. And here at Texas McCombs, we have kind of a pretty intimate community of students. Everybody knows each other. Everybody's helping each other out. So we want to see who you are from a really 360 view.
Oh, that's great. And like you said, not every school has that opportunity to bring in all of those different pieces all in one application. Sometimes, you have to wait until you have an opportunity to do that. And I think McCombs has that opportunity. So, okay, let's switch gears to some school specific questions. Um, the first one is I ask everyone on the podcast is, you know, one of the things that's really challenging, I think I take it for granted, you may even take it for granted at times, is that we've been in the space for a while. I have a good sense for like what schools bring different things to the table. But every candidate that comes in just has no idea, right? And when I hear the school list, I'm like, those are so different in terms of their experiences. But how do you differentiate among so many schools? Like one school says they're number one, and one school says they're number one, and they're good at this, and they're not good at this, and blah blah blah. But how does McCombs really differentiate who they are as an MBA program, and how would you articulate that to the audience?
Yeah, no. So I think whenever candidates are kind of entering that MBA application journey, it's really important to listen. I think listen to current students, alumni, individuals that are in the industry like you and I, in schools or not in schools, that are able to give an overview of what schools have to offer. So be a good listener, have good questions, take good notes, keep an open mind, and when possible experience the schools, because to your point, individuals list may be really long and the application process is not an easy one. So to the extent that you can explore as many schools as possible early on, you're going to be in better shape as you move through the kind of MBA application journey and then the MBA journey itself. So I think at Texas McCombs, I have like 3 Ps that help us really differentiate who we are as a school, as in a program. And the first P is really the program itself. So it's a 2-year program in a class of 250 students. So it's an intimate program that where you get to know each other, you get to know staff and faculty really well. It's a highly flexible and customizable program. You don't need to be a business undergrad. You don't need to be somebody from a quantitatively heavy background to succeed in our MBA program, because we give you a set of core classes that give you the academic foundation to then advance in those business topics that are top of mind, kind of around AI, innovation, entrepreneurship. Over 70% of our classes are self-selected, which means students really have an opportunity to customize the MBA that is right for them. You can take over 20 concentrations, 14 of which are STEM certified. So for our friends that are listening in somewhere else in the world other than the US, or in the US that are going to be international students, that's something to look out for. So I think the program itself and the ability to have a lot of choice and customization is really key. The second P is place. And I think of place as concentric circles of, Texas McCombs and UT Austin, an amazing and large research institution. So you have a small, intimate program in a large research institution that has a lot of resources for you to take advantage of. So being in a large school, we have over 50,000 students. is can be daunting, but because we're an intimate program, we're able to give you the resources and support to guide you through the resources that you need to take advantage of at the right time. So the University of Texas at Austin is one circle, the city of Austin is another circle. So what an exciting place to be in school. Austin is one of the most vibrant places in the US right now when it comes to business activity, young professionals moving to the city, large corporations moving into the city, a really vibrant startup space. So it gives our students really a live laboratory to put to practice what they're learning in the classroom. So I think it really turbocharges all of the experiential learning opportunities that you have around the academic curriculum here at Texas McCombs. And I think the one thing that no school can really replicate that we have here in Austin is that vibrant community with high accessibility. So Austin is still a medium-sized city, so it is easy to get around. So you have that access piece and relationship with UT that gives our students really an open door to put to practice what they're learning in the classroom. The last P, and I would argue probably the most important P, are people. So people are really what make our program. So individuals that are driven, but collaborative, enterprising, have that grit and perseverance, and are here to work on themselves in an authentic way. So I think our staff and faculty are able to give the support for our students to succeed at the end of the day, and people are at the center of everything we do. So I think the four P's of program, of place, and of people are really what differentiate Texas McCombs.
Wait a minute. So you really did work in marketing. You had
Yeah,
the three
right.
P's. I love it. Like I'm like taking notes. I'm like three P's. I love this. I'm going to use this now. So
I
clearly you are a marketer. Very good.
I also tend to remember things in threes, so that was really easy for me. It's a
I
little
love that.
self-serving.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
like use that and on my team. I got to think of like a mantra with three something. So I'm gonna figure that out for 2024 strategy. And by the way, like to support that point around Austin, we're actually doing our company offsite this year in Austin. So I'm super excited about that. So I will fully support Austin as a really cool place to spend the next 2 years. Um, what do you think? You go through the website, there's a lot of information that talks about some of these things that you're talking about, but what is something that maybe is challenging to capture on the website that like you would get if you visited campus that you want to like talk to the audience about? Like, what is that one thing? It's like, it's really hard for me to explain it, but this is something that makes McCombs. And until you see it, it just doesn't capture quite the way that you want it to on the website.
Yeah, so there are a couple things. One is the passion that our students, faculty, staff, and alumni community really have around the school. We often say that here at UT we bleed burnt orange. Burnt orange is our color. Is a different orange than other schools that have an orange color, and individuals that are part of this community are incredibly passionate about the school, and we do, I think, a great job at cultivating our brand reputation. So being a part of the Longhorn community, being a part of the Longhorn family is not something that we just kind of talk about. It's something that you see in action. When you come to campus, you see that live. You see the collaboration. You see individuals talking to each other. You see individuals helping each other. If you come visit a class, you can experience how welcoming our staff, students, and faculty really are, how accessible they are. They are amazing, driven experts in their own fields. Our faculty are, but super accessible. If you observe a class visit, pay attention to how long faculty stay around talking to students after the class is over, and it's not uncommon for our faculty to stay kind of around a lot. So experiencing that sense of community is really hard. We talk about collaboration, we talk about kind of being a welcoming place on the website, but until you come to Austin and can really experience it, it's really hard to see. And I think the other piece that we really talk a lot about is the relationship that the university has with the city of Austin, and it's something that was really hard to capture until you see it in action. We try to give examples of it through panels whenever we have virtual events or off-campus events, and inviting current students and alumni to talk about their experiences of experiential learning opportunities in our MBA program. But until I feel you are here and you see the proximity of where our brand new building is to the downtown of Austin, until you go to our airport and you see how easy it is to see that interaction between business community and academics and individuals that just kind of are coming into the place as a new member of the broader Austin community. It's really hard to see. If you go out and you go for a run around Town Lake, which is really close to campus, and you see everybody wearing U t-shirts and you see people talking to each other about where they've been and where they're going and their relationship to the school, it's really hard to capture. So I think that's the other piece that I would say that you can't really get from the website, though we try. And I do, invite everybody to come to campus and connect with us here in Austin, Texas.
Awesome. And I would also say, and you didn't say this, but I will. The building is incredible, and it's like a very interesting. It's like wide open, and there's a lot of visibility, like the steps, everything. So like some of that community is actually built through that building, right? Like seeing everyone interacting and all of that is really fantastic. And I do think there are some of those pictures online that give you some sense of that. All right, so I know you can't be biased; you're not supposed to, but let's try to put a slight bias here. You have candidates who come in and oftentimes they overvalue something in the application, meaning just spend way too much time. You get questions all the time, and in your mind you're like, yeah, that's important, but it's not that important. And then there's something probably in the application where you're like, man, some people just they don't spend nearly enough time on this, and I pay attention to this. What would you say is maybe one of the more overvalued in terms of the candidate time, not necessarily your own assessment, but what are some of the things that candidates maybe don't spend enough time on that you kind of wish, like, hey, I wish you'd spend a little bit more time thinking or planning or doing on this component of the application?
Yeah, so I say that I would say that from my experience, the application component that gives applicants the most stress is probably the standardized test. Not only the time that it may take candidates to prepare for it, but I feel like the amount of time that standardized tests live rent free in people's head is quite a large amount of time, worrying about which test to take, when to take it, what score to get, what our schools are looking for. Am I going to be taken out completely because I took it and it wasn't a great score? If it's, testing optional, should I take it? Should I not take it? So there's just a great amount of anxiety that goes with standardized tests. And I always like to remind applicants it is a holistic review of your application. That is one application component that we really use to help predict your academic success. But guess what? There are other items in the application, like your academic history, like your work experience, that also help us predict your academic success. So the formula that we have to kind of calculate that or help predict that doesn't just take into consideration the standardized test. So it is one component of the full application package. And I think the framing of it around the application package can be, this is an additional data point that I can provide the admissions committee to differentiate who I am as an applicant. So think about it in that context. Tackle it like you will your application essay or your interview, but do not let that particular application component kind of take over and not allow you enough time to work on your other application items. And I'll say that one place that I would ask candidates to focus on, primarily because it's new and maybe a little bit unique, is our video assessment. So, as I mentioned, everybody has access to all application components. So, after you hit the submit button on your application, shortly thereafter, all candidates receive an invitation to complete the video assessment. So, that is a great opportunity for you as an applicant record your answers and speak directly to the admissions committee. So if you think about an interview, we are learning about the applicant through somebody's views of who they are and the interview notes. The recommendation is kind of similar in manner where somebody is telling us a story about the applicant in a written format. With the video assessment, candidates have an opportunity to speak like you and I are right now directly to the admissions committee. And guess what? The admissions committee members love to watch the videos. We have an introduction video where you kind of introduce yourself in a more informal manner. And it is really a great way, something that we use all the time. Live in our admissions committee, we pull out the video assessment and get to hear the applicant speaking directly to us. So take advantage of that fully. Prepare to it like you would for an interview, but again, it's a super super important piece to bring your story all together. I think you asked for one, so I just kind of wanted to give two. One that I think
No,
takes too much time, and the other where maybe applicants don't spend as much time on. So
no, no. This is exactly what I wanted, actually. So you gave me. Usually, I ask for both, and people only give me one. So you're right now, boom, checking the box. So thank you for that. I think you know it was interesting that you said, the importance now of being able to, you have now control to be able to talk to the candidate, to be able to talk to you. That really is a fantastic opportunity. Like to your point, the interview is secondhand, right? So this is the one opportunity that you have to hear directly from the candidate, which is awesome. Let's talk about some two important pieces of the application, the recommenders and the interview. We'll start with the recommenders. Um, a lot of recommenders are going to give, call it the typical answer of like, oh, this person's great, blah 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 blah. But do you have any advice on how candidates should go about choosing recommenders, and or maybe, and it's tied to this advice, when you see a recommendation that you're like, it's good, but it doesn't look like they either know them or really are passionate about them, which may lead into your reason for why you want to choose a particular type of recommender. So, given your experience, can you just talk about that and like maybe some of the recommendations that you see that just didn't hit and maybe why you think they didn't hit?
yeah, so first, I would say that really focus the recommendation on somebody that knows you professionally. So, if at all possible, stay away from academic letters or recommendation. Most admissions committee, again, I can't speak for every school, but I would say most admissions committee are looking for somebody that will give insights on the applicant of kind of who you are, who they are in the workplace. So, getting somebody from a professional perspective is really important. The second tip that I have is using a current or previous supervisor if possible, just because those individuals will likely have had access to your annual performance review. And that is just a great place where those recommenders can be reminded of examples where candidates have had a positive impact in the work teams that they've been a part of, either leading a team or being an individual contributor in a team, and really kind of pushing initiatives and projects forward. So somebody that knows kind of your or has seen your annual kind of performance review is really key. If a current or previous supervisor not available, that's completely fine. You can also use a key client, maybe a key supplier, maybe a mentor in the workplace that may not have seen every single one of your annual reviews, but seen how you've grown in the companies that you've been a part of. So again, stay in the professional realm, but somebody that is really familiar with your work product is key. A missed opportunity, I feel like, that I see a lot of misconceptions about is applicants that go after the highest ranked person that they know in the company, even though they may not have had the opportunity to work with them individually. So that's when some of those lukewarm letters of recommendation may come in, where yes, they're generally positive, but they kind of miss the mark when it comes to specific examples of who this person is. So it doesn't necessarily maybe um, damage your application, right? Because they're generally positive, but it's certainly not a differentiator that could have been kind of a key piece that makes you stand out if it was someone that knew the what you were like in the workplace at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, totally agree on that one, and also maybe speaks to your judgment. Like, I always think like if you can't get two people or whatever the case may be to really recommend you, it's like, are you really ready for business school? I guess TBD for those candidates who are struggling with that. Let's talk about the interview process. So, and I'm gonna open it up broadly. What suggestions do you have for candidates to prepare? Because I think the one thing that is different, Dio, is like, listen, people like get their applications done, like, woo, done, like, so now they're getting an email and they're saying, all right, like, let's you're not quite done, let's finish the interview process, let's have this asynchronous interview process that McCombs has, and give a chance to really tell your story. I could also see, like you can, like prepare for that, really be ready. So, what suggestions do you have to prepare for that? Both that interview process as well as like your standard interview process. How do you prepare for that? What's the best way for candidates to think about telling that authentic story?
Yeah, so I'll speak specifically about McCombs a little bit, but I think you can take some of those ideas and suggestions kind of broadly to other business schools as well. So here at Texas McCombs, we use behavioral questions for both the video assessment and interview. So in a way, you can prepare for both together. And I think most schools use primarily behavioral based questions. Some schools may use behavioral based questions and case questions, but I think most will at least use the behavioral based questions. So, in preparing for an interview for a school that uses those types of questions, you're probably going to be preparing for a lot of interviews in a lot of different schools. So, really have kind of examples ready that will showcase who you are broadly. So, to the extent possible, really diversify the examples that you have between different projects so you're not touching on the same thing over and over again. Not to go back to the letter recommendation, but just to touch on the fact that everything kind of flows together. So if you have an opportunity to talk to the recommender, which you should, let them know how you're going to be presenting yourself to the admissions committee. And I would even go as far as to say, hey, here are some projects that I'm going to be talking about in my interview so that they know what to showcase or highlight whenever they're writing that letter of recommendation or providing examples to the admissions committee about the particular candidate. So really preparing examples for those behavioral based questions is really key. The other piece is doing a lot of school research so that you are well versed on not only why you want to be an MBA. So, a question that will be in every single interview is why you want an MBA and why you want to go to that particular school. So, prepare and be ready for your own personal reasons of why you want an MBA and why you want to go to that particular business school. Stay away from the kind of the marketing language that we probably put on the website. We're very familiar with it. So, uh, give us your story of why you want to come to Texas McCombs, for example, and put into practice really the research that you've done with the school by talking to students, talking to alumni, coming to visit campus if you're able to visit campus, and showcasing the experience that you had interacting with schools as kind of a reason for coming to pursue your MBA studies here. And I think the last piece is come ready with 2 to 3 questions to ask at the end of the interview. And because some schools will share who the interviewer is, but other schools won't, I will be ready with, 2 to 3 different sets of questions that you could ask for an admissions officer, for example, that you can ask for a current student or maybe an alum. So you would prepare those questions ahead of time and have them ready. And if you see, all right, I'm interviewing with Rodrigo, I know that he's an admissions officer, but he's also an alum of the program, here are the kind of questions that I'm going to ask. Or I'm going to be interviewing with Mary, I know that she is a current student, so I'm going to really focus on the student experience for those questions. So tailoring those questions to who is interviewing you is really key, and doing a little bit of the homework ahead of time to be ready to whoever is going to be interviewing is really important as well.
I think if when we edit this podcast, we need some music when you came with that jewel, because you just dropped a big one there, which is like be ready for different types of interview questions, because you can't ask an experiential question to an admissions officer that didn't go to the program. You could to you, like, and so understanding that there's going to be a different, really a different answer. based on the question that you give is so critical. That's like, I mean, I can't tell you how important that is for you podcast listeners right now. Have different sets of questions for the interview because you may have to pivot. Things could change. The interviewer could change, so you want to be ready. So great point. Thank you for bringing that up. All right, now I'm going to give you the secret handshake. We're going to go inside the admissions committee. So boom, we're ready to roll. So help the audience understand like what it's like in the admissions committee. Like, do you have like a throne? Is there like a room? Like, is there a red car? Like, what's going on? Like I want to know. Like, is there this burnt orange throne, and then you sit on top, and then everyone sits around? Like, how does it work? Like, talk us through kind of the process for every application, who reads, when you all read together, how you all discuss. Would love to know that.
Yeah, no, there's no throne. Though that's really funny to think about that. But we invite a lot of members of our community to read somebody's application. Now, these are individuals that have been trained and are enabling the admissions committee to make the best decision. We know that inherently, like all of us have our own individual biases. So by having the application be touched by different people, it allows everyone to see that applicant from a different perspective, which we really appreciate here at Texas McCombs. So the application gets read either by a member of my team or an extension of my team, which are readers that we contract with to help us kind of do a deep read of the application. We have current student ambassadors that help us review the video assessment as well as carry out the peer interview, live interview. We have admissions officers that will be reading the application, but also in the room with the admissions committee in making that decision as well. There are individuals that are part of our MBA program in our community that are also invited to the admissions committee. So program leadership, our colleagues on the career team are also invited to come and attend our admissions committee meetings. And finally, we have degree evaluators that do the verification of the academic credentials that are submitted by our applicants. So those are kind of individuals within UT that are doing that verification and validation as well. So at the end of the day, a lot of different touch points and people that are documenting their notes on the application. And then when we come together as an admissions committee, we meet for over 3 weeks every day in the same room. So there's a lot of togetherness time and it's a lot of fun. And to the extent possible, we like to be there in person just because it makes it a little bit more fun, but also we can work a little bit quicker when we're sitting there in person. So if you can picture a really nice room in our building where we come in and there's usually the smell of coffee in the morning. We're actually all coffee drinkers except for one, but we still like him even though he doesn't like coffee. You can come in and then we're there getting our days started. We bake a lunch at the same time, and we usually bring lunch from home or go grab lunch somewhere together, but we usually eat in the room as well, and kind of continue to work through the applications. We wait until the admissions decision release date to release the decision so that we don't have individuals kind of going to the boards out there or Reddit and sharing, hey, I got my admissions offer from McCombs and we're still reviewing applications. So in order to avoid a little more anxiety for our applicant pool, we release all of our decisions in the same day. And that decision release day is just an amazing day at Texas McCombs. We invite our student ambassadors to help us make the admit phone calls. So we basically reserve every single room in the building, ask people not to come in the office if they have their office so that we can use it for the admit calls. We bring in donuts or breakfast tacos or sometimes both, and spend most of the morning making those congratulatory calls, which are kind of really exciting to do at the end of the day.
I think a breakfast taco sounds quite yummy right now. I haven't had my breakfast, so maybe I can join you for those calls next time. That's fabulous. And thank you for kind of walking us through that. No throne, but like I think maybe in the future, maybe we can work towards that. Let's figure that out. Okay, so it seems like it's a very comprehensive process. Um, you go through those. I would imagine a lot of the 3 weeks is around those kind of maybe candidates, right? Good candidates, you like the application, and you're kind of now comparing all the maybe candidates. How do you feel about updates? So different application admissions officers feel differently about it. Some are like, like it's just we already have enough going on, and we're getting all these pings and all that kind of stuff. But how do you specifically feel about getting an update from a candidate, and what is the best? Can you give the proper context by which you should do it, and maybe also the threshold by which an actual update is a real update? Because I'm sure you don't want a bunch of knocks on your door when you're working.
Yeah, no. So we have, we pride ourselves in being a highly accessible admissions team. So I'm really active on LinkedIn and actually invite all of your viewers and listeners to connect with me on LinkedIn and ask questions about MBA application process, Texas McCombs. Happy to answer those. But as far as updates to an application that has been submitted, candidates have an option in their kind of applicant community to submit updates directly. So we enable them to submit those updates to us. So interesting updates would be promotions at work or changes just kind of in your work situation. So you can submit a new resume. If you have retaken a standardized test and have some new scores, great update to give us. So um, those tend to be the most common ones that we see quite a bit of. So use the tools that we have in place to give us those updates. Again, we're highly accessible, so you can always email us. We can reach out to us via LinkedIn and let us know, hey, we have this update. If you reach out to me on LinkedIn and you say, hey, I have a new test score, I'm going to say, hey, here's this link so you can update it directly so we know for sure that it gets added to your application and is ready for the admissions committee to see at the end of the day. You have a new resume. Great. Here's the link for you to submit to us directly. But you can reach out to us. We can kind of point you in the right direction in case you have a hard time finding the place where you can kind of uh, uh, in a self-service way really kind of give us that update. I think the one thing that try to avoid doing is to contact all of us with the same question, expecting to, and sometimes candidates will expect to get a different answer, which can be a little bit annoying. So we again welcome your questions, but if you speak to one of us, you speak to all of us, right? We sit in a row in our building, so if you're making a call to each of us in a row, we're gonna hear the phone ring, and then we're gonna hear the same answer being being given to candidates that are asking the same questions. So don't be that candidate, but reach out to us with questions and give us update as long as they are kind of meaningful enough that they will impact your application at the end of the day.
I thought only my children were the ones that went to different people to try to get a different answer, but I guess it happens with MBA applicants as well. Well, thank you for that. I wanted to ask you really quickly about artificial intelligence, right? So, with everything going on now, just out of curiosity, how has that impacted kind of your process as a leader in admissions, and how have you thought about it? How have you seen it impact? Do you use it? Are you seeing candidates use it? Really, just want to get your perspective on your outlook as it relates to that.
Yep, no, that's a great question. So I'll start with kind of one of the last pieces that you asked. We don't use it as part of our evaluation process. So I want to be really clear to all of the candidates that you take a lot of time to bring your application components together, submit that application. It can be anxiety producing to put yourself out there, and know that we really respect the information that you put together, and humans here at Texas McCombs are going to be listening to your story. So we do not use AI to evaluate candidates, to triage candidates. Again, all candidates get access to all of the application components, and we're listening to your individual stories. So that's one piece of it. Now, me, Rodrigo Malta, I do use ChatGPT quite a bit. English is my second language. I'm originally from Brazil, so sometimes my sentence structure doesn't is not the best. So I'm constantly using ChatGPT just to make sure that I'm expressing myself in a written format in a clear and concise manner, right? So I do use it. I do use ChatGPT to ask a few questions, generally things in a more personal basis, and it does give some great advice. It does really help with sentence structure. So me, Rodrigo Malta, I kind of like to use it. I think it's kind of funny. Sometimes I ask funny questions. Anyways, um, last piece is I think candidates, are they using it or not? I would assume that the majority of candidates are using AI chat GPT in one way or another in the application process. And from my perspective, I feel like you should at least leverage it to build a stronger application. Oftentimes when I first started this job on chat GPT or AI was around, I always encourage candidates to have somebody read their essays for kind of a second view, or have somebody make sure that the essay didn't have grammatical errors and it sounded like them. I still encourage candidates to use a human to read those essays to make sure they come across as who they are in their own personal brand. But now that GPT is available, why not use it just to make sure that the information is coming across again in a clear and concise manner? But I'll use it as a step to enhance the materials that you're submitting, not the only step, right? You want to make sure that whatever you're sharing about yourself to the admissions committee comes from you as an individual. It comes in your personal brand. So you can use ChatGPT for research. You can use it to kind of help with grammatical errors, but at the end of the day, everything should come from you from a human perspective. So you or someone that knows you should have kind of that last review of your application materials, for example. So leverage it, but leverage it as a piece of kind of that process.
No, that's great. It's like it's a tool, not the tool, right? Like I mean, it's ultimately like it's a piece of the process, just like we would use any other technology. Spell check. Originally, people were like, "That's cheating." It's like everyone uses spell check now, right? It's a tool, but it's not. It's not. You can't rely on it by itself. I can't believe this is really flown by. But before we conclude, is there anything else you want to say that you didn't get a chance to say? And I have one thing for you before we really conclude that I need you to do for the audience.
Yeah, so one thing that I would say, and I mentioned this before, is we pride ourselves in being a highly accessible admissions team. So wherever you are in the world, reach out to us, right? We could connect you with you via LinkedIn, via email, via webinar, via a group chat, via a one-on-one Calendly appointment. We go on the road, so come to our events. And if you come to Austin, which I invite everybody to come to Austin, let us know ahead of time so we can make your visit really meaningful and special. We're happy to kind of pre-connect you with our ambassadors, and so you make the best of your time here in our city.
All right, and then the last request, I need to hook 'em horns so that everyone in the audience knows how to do it appropriately. You don't mess it up. So can we show the audience? Can we teach the audience how we do this correctly?
Oh yeah, totally. So here's the hook 'em horns. I'm trying to make sure. So
There
it's
we
like
go.
this.
There we
It's
go.
it's not a hang loose, though I do love a good hang loose. It reminds me of the beach and everything, but it's not this, it's this.
It's
So
not surf. It's
um
not the surf side of it. It's okay, great. Well, we have that taken care of. Well, Digo, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. I know I learned a lot from you, and I'm sure our listeners did as well. And until next time, thank you so much for listening to Grad Talk MBA podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our Magoosh GMAT YouTube. If you enjoyed this episode, and I know you did, and learn more about our MBA admissions, our GMAT, and our GRE products at magoosh.com. Any last words, Digo, before we go?
No, good luck with the process. Thanks for listening today. And I look forward to hopefully meeting many of you in person in Austin or on the road.
Great. Hook 'em.
Welcome.